If Sarah Geronimo has sold platinum records for 20 years, built a billion-peso fortune, and is one of the most awarded entertainers in the country, then why in the world does she rent the house she lives in? Why does she have so much but use so little? Sarah chooses to live as an average woman, and today, we'll find out why. Sarah's strangely simple life. If you ever bumped into Sarah Geronimo at a Manila grocery store, you might not even notice her. She would have no entourage trailing behind her or flashy bags swinging off her arm. Chances are that she'll be just a woman comparing price tags like anyone else on a budget. That image feels almost impossible to square with the numbers behind her name. But this is where the facts also get interesting. Celebrity net worth places Sarah's net worth as approaching the billions in pesos, easily making her one of the highest-paid entertainers in the Philippines for over 20 years. Yet when Sarah married the actor Matteo Guidicelli in 2020, the couple didn't choose anything close to a celebrity dream home. Rather, many fans were surprised to find out that the couple had been living in a small condo unit in Makati before the wedding. Still, right after the ceremony, they would upgrade to something even far more bizarre. Many fans wondered why her team even bothered calling this an upgrade. It was an average 4-bedroom house with a garden, which Sarah said made them feel healthier mentally just having outdoor space to breathe in. And here is the part that surprises people the most. This watered-down home wasn't even theirs to begin with. Yes, they rented that house. They don't even own it. This was a woman worth close to 1 billion pesos and much more in investments, yet she and her husband chose to rent a 4-bedroom. Yet by all metrics, buying a mansion outright at that point in their lives made total sense, as both of them could easily afford the costs. But even though the math was on their side, they lived on very little money. Very little, in fact, that Vicky Bello, the celebrity dermatologist who has known the couple for years, once described them with a single word: tipid. This Tagalog word means thrifty. This would suggest a lifestyle where every decision from which groceries to buy down to choosing which bottle of water to drink from on a hot day depended on which one was the smartest financial investment. No, this was not an exaggeration. Vicky Bello once recalled going shopping with the newlyweds and watching Sarah check every single price tag before deciding whether something was worth buying. Her husband Matteo would talk constantly about saving up for the home of their dreams instead of just buying whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it. Yet, that was not even the highlight of their spending habits. When asked directly about their very first investments as a young couple just starting in show business, Sarah didn't mention designer items or sports cars. She mentioned the decisions made while building the family home. She also mentioned buying an air conditioning unit only because their old apartment used to get unbearably hot. And strangely enough, that was about it. Buying a fan during a hot season was the thing that mattered more to her early financial story than anything flashy ever could. Again, this is a woman who could buy almost anything she wants without blinking, and she chose an air conditioner as one of her proudest early purchases. So to understand why she chooses to spend so little, we have to go back in time to a small house in Santa Cruz, Manila, a time when money was scarce and life was very different. As we'll see, the background behind her lifestyle choices is surprising. The architecture of a poor childhood. Sarah Asher. Tua Geronimo was born in 1988. She was the third of 4 children to Delphin and Divina Geronimo. Her father worked as a lineman for the phone company PLDT. Most of his work was climbing poles and fixing wires. This was a risky job for a man his age, but was done for a paycheck that barely stretched far enough for the family. So to close the gap, Sarah's mother tried to close the gap by running a small beauty salon right out of their home, cutting hair and doing nails for neighbors while also feeding 4 kids who needed attention. Sadly, that still wasn't enough. So the family quickly fell into debt, and they had to move houses more than once just to stay ahead of the bills they couldn't afford. But family struggles were just the beginning. For a little girl who loved to sing more than anything else in the world, getting accustomed to those limitations could have crushed the dream long before it even started. But rather, it built the foundation for everything that came after. Let's picture that household for a second. There are 4 children under one roof, a mother juggling scissors and combs in the living room just to bring in extra cash, a father coming home tired from climbing telephone poles all day, and somewhere in the middle of all that noise, a toddler who wouldn't stop singing. Thankfully, this was an early obsession that never bothered the parents. So much so that Sarah was already performing in front of strangers by the time she was less than 3 years old. She would sing Christmas songs at a mall show like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nobody in her home had money to spare for music lessons or singing coaches. But what they did was make her accustomed to singing at her best in front of strangers from a young age. With the little he knew, Sarah's father became her first music teacher. He had her practice every single day, making her voice get better each time until it impressed him as someone who was already accustomed to how well she could sing. One of Sarah's first inspirations was the famous singer Regine Velasquez. Reports from back then said she used to submerge herself in seawater to strengthen her windpipe. She told her father about it during a playful conversation. Of course, her father didn't have an entire ocean nearby, so he improvised. So he took her swimming as often as he could, doing whatever he could with what little they had. This was Sarah Geronimo's childhood in a nutshell, just relentless work with whatever was within her reach. She had learned how to achieve so much by spending so little, yet the growing pains of teenagehood would be far more difficult. More financial stress within peak success. When Sarah had become a teenager, she had already been performing for over 11 years, singing in malls and small competitions, slowly building a reputation nobody could ignore. In 2003, for example, at just 14 years old, she entered a televised singing competition called Star for a Night. She had auditioned and failed twice before this and finally made progress on her third try. Then, to everyone's surprise, she won the entire competition. The performance that earned her that spot was a cover of a Celine Dion ballad in front of a packed arena, and it was that single night that changed the trajectory of her entire life. With the country's entertainment industry now aiming in her direction, she was signed with a major record label almost immediately, and her debut album became one of the fastest-selling records in Philippine music history. Not long after that, it became certified 5 times platinum and recognized as the longest #1 charting album the country had ever seen. From there, the wins didn't stop coming. Slowly but surely, Sarah was able to build a career that spanned music, film, and television all at once. This was something her own manager pushed for from day one. Unfortunately, it also began to have a negative impact on her mental health. Even while saving half of her earnings while also trying to support her parents with most of the rest, Sarah would film movies during the day and rehearse concerts at night, treating every single opportunity like it might be the last one. As we'll see, this lifestyle of minimum spending with very excessive working would almost cost Sarah her life. But for now, that lifestyle choice paid off in ways most child performers never get close to. Not only were her finances more stable than most stars her age, but she also became a 3-time box office queen, crowned for blockbuster films that pulled in hundreds of millions of pesos at the box office. The television dramas she performed in pulled record-breaking ratings, with one pilot episode she starred in reportedly capturing nearly 36% of the entire viewing audience in a single night. After making that record, many brands lined up to attach themselves to her name, from fast food chains to telecom companies to major banks. She was locked into endorsement deals that quietly stacked her income year after year. The future was bright, yet she spent and lived as if she was almost out of money. As if she was on the edge of bankruptcy, Sarah did her best not to rely on music either. In 2008, she starred opposite John Lloyd Cruz in a romantic comedy that grossed close to 200 million pesos, earning her the first of 3 box office queen crowns. The sequel did even better, with some reports ranking her even higher among the 3. Yet a decade later, she took on something that would turn her financial earnings upside down. This role required playing an elderly woman who magically transformed into her 25-year-old self. This role demanded she study the mannerisms of actual senior citizens in retirement homes just to get the performance right. Critics praised her for it, and the audiences loved her even more. Yet she didn't stop there, going on to spend years sitting in the coach's chair on televised competitions, mentoring teenagers chasing the same dream she once had. The kind of full-circle moment that only makes sense once you understand where she actually started. But before that, Sarah got married, and this was where her financial stress reached its peak. Simple living and larger investing. Many things about Sarah's lifestyle choices show that it's never because she doesn't have the means. Rather, it has more to do with the fact that comfort and security mean more to her than the appearance of wealth ever will. However, don't let her cheap appearances fool you. Behind the modest house and the careful budgeting sits one of the sharpest and most intelligent business minds in Philippine entertainment history. During the pandemic, when production work ground to a halt and most were troubled with how to make a living during those difficult times, Sarah and Matteo had started filming their own music videos at home. The living room of their home became their makeshift studio, and from that living room, G Productions was born. This company started from their home, built together from the ground up, from scratch. And by 2023, that small idea had grown into G Studios, a full production facility in Alabang built to handle advertising, media, and live events. From this, she would take a bold step that changed the game entirely. In 2025, Sarah surprised everyone by launching her own independent record label. This was G Music, and with a team of trusted lawyers, she was able to take back direct control over her own catalog after more than 20 years of working under other people's labels. Her financial literacy has been most obvious when she speaks to fans about the importance of thinking about life insurance early on and starting long-term savings as early as possible. Her biggest mantra on this topic is often about how starting early means a bigger payout down the road. Many believe this advice was clearly born from a childhood where money never came easy. Now think about what that actually means. After 20 years of letting other companies own her masters, collect a cut of her earnings, and make decisions about her own music, Sarah finally built something that answers to only her. Though she had a lot of money, she was never content to coast on past success. Rather, she was someone who watched her parents struggle to control their own finances and decided from the very first chance she got that she would never let someone else hold the keys to her own work again. And as we've seen, it's that same instinct that made her check price tags at the grocery store and is the instinct that made her start her own label instead of renewing one more contract. But what many didn't know was how much mental anxiety this caused her. For this reason, Sarah has talked about this decision openly in interviews about money. In addition to talking about how she felt obligated to take that leap of faith, she also explained that while she was very successful, the reality was that she wasn't getting any younger. She and Matteo discussed early on that the best time to start saving and investing is while you're still young and capable of working hard, because the earlier you begin, the bigger the payoff ends up being years later. Fans point out that it's the kind of advice that sounds obvious coming from a financial planner, but lands very differently coming from a woman who grew up watching her own parents fall behind on bills. For Sarah, building G Studios wasn't just a business decision. After years of hard work at the cost of her mental health, she was the final proof, to herself more than to anyone else, that the family that once struggled to keep the lights on now owns the building. And of course, none of this came without a cost. And this time it would almost cost Sarah her life. Endless struggles and controversies. In 2018, Sarah Geronimo was in the middle of a tour. This is usually the most stressful yet thrilling moment of the artist's traveling adventure, but not for Sarah. She was burned out and exhausted, and to the shock of fans watching, she broke down on stage in Las Vegas. As the people watching gasped, confused, and almost panicking, she got up and walked off to compose herself. After a few minutes, she came limping back in tears, telling the crowd in a shaking voice that she was tired. Fans were even more surprised to see her finally open up further right there in front of thousands of people, that she had never been prepared for the pressure of staying perfect for everyone else. It was a huge moment in her career, but also where major controversies began. While some fans remained supportive, others insisted she should just be grateful for everything she had. They said repeatedly that a person with endless opportunities and privilege is in no place to talk about convenient problems most people would trade their biggest woes for. Yet it is also believed that both reactions missed the same point. As many seasoned doctors who have worked with celebrities would tell you, a platinum career doesn't buy immunity from exhaustion. Sometimes it just hides it better, right up until it doesn't. And by that point, Sarah had been working almost nonstop since she was 14. Now, it had been 15 straight years of concerts, films, television tapings, and endorsement shoots, all while keeping the same warm, perfect, and dependable image that fans had fallen in love with from the very beginning. Nobody around her had ever asked what it cost to keep that image polished night after night. The Las Vegas moment forced the question into the open, whether anyone was ready for it or not. It wasn't a scandal. With this in mind, it's easy to summarize that event as simply a woman finally admitting out loud that being in her position isn't everything it's cracked up to be. It is a full-time job that can break a person down if the person forgets to rest. Now she was learning the hard way, and 2 years later, the pressure would find her yet again. This time, though, it would be off stage. You see, Sarah and Matteo's wedding in February 2020 was meant to be a small, private affair at a chapel in Taguig. Instead, it became one of the most talked-about controversies of her career. Her mother reportedly arrived at the reception unannounced and visibly upset. And what followed was a chaotic public confrontation that left Sarah shaken, and her family fractured for years after that event. There have been many tabloids on this viral event, but neither side ever gave a full account of what really happened that night, and Sarah, true to form, refused to turn her own wedding into a public spectacle. But thanks to growing mental strains and struggles, that silence would only last 2 years and 8 months. So on October 29, 2022, Sarah finally broke it, posting a long, handwritten letter to her parents on Instagram with the comments turned off. She asked for forgiveness for the pain her choices had caused. In that same post, she also thanked her parents for the life they gave her and her siblings, and admitted that nothing about a so-called perfect life or perfect love actually exists, and she had now learned that the hard way. At this point in her life, Sarah Geronimo's future in the entertainment world and beyond was almost looking hopeless. But little did she know that another major success was on the horizon. The first Woman of the Year. Many heads turned when Billboard named her the Philippines Woman of the Year in 2024. And it didn't stop there. She also became the first Filipino artist in history to receive a Global Force Award on a stage. It had now been 20 years into her career, she was still breaking records nobody else in the country had touched. On paper, this is a woman who should be living in a sprawling mansion with a fleet of luxury cars parked outside. But that isn't what happened, and the reason why might be the most important part of this entire story. What makes that 20-year run even more impressive is how often Sarah could have simply stopped reinventing herself and coasted. Most pop stars who break through as teenagers eventually hit a wall, repeating the same formula until audiences move on to someone younger. She shifted from sentimental ballads to EDM-tinged pop in her late 20s, then pivoted again to produce her own material in her 30s, co-writing songs instead of simply performing them. She took on a married woman's role just months after her real-life wedding, then an autistic woman's role that required her to spend real time with people on the spectrum to get the performance right, refusing to treat the part as a stunt. Every few years, just as audiences settled into one version of Sarah Geronimo, she quietly became a different one, and somehow the fans kept following. It would take until 2024 for Sarah to confirm she was speaking to her mother again, and it wasn't until early 2026 that fans caught a rare public glimpse of Sarah finally walking alongside her father at a charity run in Manila, a moment so unexpected that it trended within hours simply because so few people believed they'd ever see it. That's the part of Sarah Geronimo's story that didn't make it into the mainstream media. So when people ask why someone like Sarah Geronimo, worth close to $1 billion pesos, still rents her own home, checks price tags before buying anything, and waits years before saying a single public word about her own family's pain, the answer isn't complicated at all. A simple look at her life from the start up until June 2026 shows that she has built her entire identity and sense of safety long before the money ever showed up. And it all started from a small house in Santa Cruz, where a beauty salon and a phone company paycheck were the only things standing between her family and real trouble. There's a version of this story where Sarah Geronimo buys the mansion, hires the publicist, and lets every detail of her wedding controversy play out as a carefully managed headline. That version probably exists for plenty of other stars at her level of fame, and nobody would have blamed her for choosing it. Sarah Geronimo clearly had the money for it, right from the very beginning. What she didn't have, and what no amount of money could buy her, was a guarantee that any of it would actually make her feel safe. So she built her own version of safety instead, under one rented house, and it's worked for over 20 years now in an industry that easily destroys people's careers. But even on the thinnest budget, she survived. Now tell us what you think. If you suddenly had $1 billion pesos in the bank tomorrow, would you spend it to impress everyone around you, or would you spend it to finally feel safe? Let us know down in the comments. And if this story gave you a new appreciation for Sarah, please like the video, subscribe to her status, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next one. Until next time, take care. Take care.